So this is going to be another movie review. This one's called Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, 1980. I'm giving this 4 to 5 stars. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty corny. I liked it a lot more when I was a kid. But actually, now that I'm an adult, I like the Steve Reeve version, black and white Superman television show better than Superman 2. So with this disc, what they did was a bunch of fans of the Christopher Reeve Superman series. They told the movie producers to re-edit Superman 2. What happened was about 75% through Superman 2. Well, first of all, Superman and Superman 2 were both shot at the same time. They were released 2 years apart. The director at the time, Richard Donner, was about 75% through with Superman 2, and they fired him. And they had Richard Lester, directed Petulia and a bunch of Beatles movies. So in order to get Richard Lester's name in the credit, he had to rewrite and reshoot a lot of stuff. So in 2006, the fans of the series of these movies started petitioning for the Richard Donner version of Superman 2, and they managed to pull it off. They got a bunch of dusty old reels and put it together. It's pretty impressive. I was kind of surprised that I almost liked it as much as I did when I was a kid. It's got a booming score by John Williams. Who can forget that score? And then got a lot of cool explosions. It's got a lot of weird scenes in it that kind of got my attention when I was 10 years old in movie theaters. Namely the Joan Jett look-alike. Whom I had a crush when I was 10 years old in the movie theater, played by Sarah Douglas. She fries a snake with her eyeballs. That was pretty bizarre. And then prior to that, all three General Zod, played by Terence Stamp, the big guy. His name is Elf or Ulf, something like that. His name is Nan, I think. Yeah, his name is Nan. Excuse me. He's the big guy. All three of them, they go to the moon with these astronauts, and they're like tossing them around like rag dolls in slow motion. It's really weird. It's like something out of Space 1999. Anyways, I guess the difference between this one and the Richard Lester film is that you got a lot more scenes with Marlon and Brando in it. I guess they cut him out of the Richard Lester version to save money, and then might be all the scenes with Marlon Brando were restored, and none of them were in the Richard Lester version. I'm not sure, but a lot of them are there. Superman gets thrown into the Statue of Liberty torch, and there's a mushy kissing between Superman and Lois Lane, Christopher Reeves and Margot Kidder, who's great as sisters. One of my all-time favorite Brian De Palma movies, right up there with The Fury. But in any case, the story starts out way different than the Richard Lester version. Starts out with Marlon Brando sentencing these three criminals on the planet Krypton to this another bizarre-looking mirror thing that they're trapped in. It's just kind of floating through space, and they're going, ah. And then I have to say this movie has better continuity with the Richard Donner version than it does with the Richard Lester version. I was trying to figure out how the two were connected. When I started watching the Richard Lester version, I got about halfway through it. And I said, nah, I don't want to see this. I've already seen the movie theater like 35 years ago. Oh, more than that, almost 40 years ago. And so I didn't want to go through that again, but I did watch about half of it for whatever that's worth. And I just thought there's better flow. It's like the Richard Donner cut is like part 2 of the first Superman movie. It's like one big movie broken up into 2 parts, if that makes sense. And it's probably why the fans wanted to see it. I don't know. But they restored all this Richard Donner scenes, including some of the pre-screening stuff. That was kind of interesting. Well, they didn't restore all of it, but they restored as much as they could, given their budgetary constraints, I guess. And anyways, getting back to the story. So Lex Luthor, I guess it's the end of Superman, and I haven't seen Superman in like 40 years. So, or more than that, 42 years, I guess, because there's a gap of 2 years between the 2 releases. And I guess Lex Luthor is launching an atomic bomb, and Superman throws it into space, and it smashes the mirror with General Zod, Terra Stamp, Non, and Joan Jett look-alike. So they fly to the moon, all 3 of them. They start wreaking havoc on this astronaut mission, and then they go to planet Earth. They take over the White House, and they get the world to submit to them with their Superman-like powers. And Terra Stamp actually walks on water. I remember seeing that in the movie theater. A lot of the stuff in this movie brings back memories. But yeah. So Lois Lane figures out that Superman is actually Clark Kent. They go to Niagara Falls on this fake honeymoon because Perry White wants to he wants to do an expose on how newlyweds are getting ripped off at the Niagara Falls. I guess kind of lame, but this movie is way corny. I think I liked it a lot more when I was a kid because it was so dang corny. Perry White says, "Don't call me Chief," in a nod to the television show from the 50s. That was pretty cool. And it wasn't as funny as the original Perry White, though. I like the television version of Perry White better than this one. And so when Lois Lane finds out that he's Superman, she shoots him out with a blank cartridge, and before she reveals that it's a blank, Clark Kent admits that he's actually Superman. So she kind of tricked him. And there's no scene like the Richard Lester version where she jumps into Niagara Falls. That's another difference. The Niagara Falls scenes were completely different. There's in the Richard Lester film, there's a scene with the Eiffel Tower. There's none of that in this one. And anyways, Superman goes back to his icy little vacation home, where his pops is still alive in the form of a hologram played by Marlon Brando. He's got this weird British accent, and I guess to make him sound smart. I don't know, but in any case, his pops tells him not to relinquish his powers so he can be normal like Lois Lane, but he doesn't listen to Pops, Marlon Brando, and he becomes ordinary human. Has his powers stripped away from him so that he can live a normal life with Lois Lane as Clark Kent, the bumbling fool. And he goes to the diner, gets beat up real bad. I remember that scene in the movie theater too. So that's another thing that wasn't different. Some similarities, some differences. I'm guessing about 25% is different. The rest is pretty much the same. But some significant differences in the story, obviously, because Richard Lester had to rewrite the whole thing almost from scratch. He kept a lot of stuff, but anyways. As Superman's getting beat up in the diner by some bully guy, not Superman, but Clark Kent, the Superman with no powers, the Clark Kent version of Superman, he gets beat up in the diner pretty bad. So his face is all bloody and puffy. And he looks at the TV screen. He sees that General Zod taking control of the world. He walks back to his ice castle place. And the Marlon Brando hologram magically pops up. And somehow, don't ask me how, but the hologram has some kind of Superman power to it. So Jor-El gives up his immortal hologram life to restore Superman. And then there's a battle scene with Superman and three bad people: Zod, Non and the Joan Jett look alike. They start battling it out, destroying a lot of property. Superman throws Zod into
Good evening, Belmont Library. Please join us in a few minutes in the Toby Room, where our documentary club will be watching Always in Season. February is Black History Month, and this documentary is Jacqueline Olive's award-winning documentary film, Always in Season, explores the lingering impact of more than a century of lynching African Americans and connects this form of historic racial terrorism to racial violence today. We'll be starting in a few minutes. Please join us.
I think I'll pass on that one. Anyways, I gotta get going here and drive him back, but yeah, Superman throws Zod, Terence stamping the Coke sign. There's a lot of destruction of property and stuff, and Superman appears to chicken out. He just flies away. So Lex Luthor brings the three of them to the ice castle thing, and pretty cool little plot twist at the end. Nice, actually a couple plot twists. I'm almost tempted to give this 5 stars. I guess I give it a 4.5 out of 5, which is essentially 5 stars, but not quite a 5, I guess. And pretty cool to see the flashback memories of watching this on the big screen when I was 10 years old, as well as the actual original director's vision of what Superman would be. It was kind of interesting. On the bonus features, to hear Richard Donner complain about how he got kicked off like 26 years later. He's got his no fur button on his lapel. That was kind of irritating, but anyways, he said something that was kind of interesting. If he had been the director for both films, it might have the series might have actually turned out better than it did. Obviously, Superman 4: The Quest for Peace was a big dud, and I don't think I've even seen Superman 3. Is that with Richard Pryor? But anyways, kind of interesting to see the history behind it, to bring back childhood memories, and to see some of the differences between the theatrical version and the 2006 re-edited version, which is what I just saw. So cool stuff. I guess I'll post the trailer and or the movie in the description box if I can find it. I don't think it's on YouTube, but I'll check and see. I forgot to mention John Williams is the musician behind the great score in this movie, so I'll do that as well. And highly recommend it. Well, not so highly, but somewhat recommended. Check it out, and that's the end of my review. Laters.